Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's really confused by the album that he's going to be reviewing today, McCartney III Imagined. It is a complete remake and cover album and remix album of McCartney III, which he released a couple months ago and I reviewed up here. I think it's a pretty good review. I'm a little bit confused because we're living in a new moment where the time in between an original work and a reimagining of the work keeps getting compressed. No longer do we need to have decades, no longer do we need to have years. We can have months and weeks in this case, or as I will be reviewing later in the week, Sharon Van Etten released a cover album on the album that is covered, okay? It's an interesting cultural moment. I think it has a lot to do with EDM and hip hop and just the remix culture and mashup culture. But I think for an artist like Paul McCartney, it's wonderful because he's constantly in danger of sort of artistically dying, right? Like he's an old man and he's constantly making new music, and he's making new music intentionally, and he's keeping himself alive by doing new things, by not just playing the greatest hits, by trying to create something interesting. I mean, I think is a very interesting album. You know, he played every note on it. And I love that these young people, these younger artists, are covering this, are taking his older work more seriously. It's not Live and Let Die and Yesterday. It's something much more interesting to hear, which is songs that aren't loved, that aren't known, that aren't this monolith in our society. Instead, there are these new songs where Paul McCartney's still trying to work things out. And this has given me a chance to really spend a lot of time with the old album, you know, with the original version and the new version. And the real question is, should this exist, and does this help you enjoy the original album more? I will answer that question at the end of this video. It's a particularly weird one because he did everything on 3, played every note, sang every word. So in this, I don't think he did anything. So it's almost the opposite of the original album that he's doing. I think he just gave the stems and told artists, do what you want, you know, and they just did what they wanted. Not a good impersonation. And I like it because it's continuing this process that Paul McCartney's always seems to be stuck in, where he's trying to find younger artists to help him stay relevant. But the funny thing is, obviously he doesn't need to. He's the greatest living songwriter alive, right? Oh, he's living and alive, Sky? That's a good thing you don't edit your show. He's the greatest living songwriter alive who's not dead. And you know, he doesn't need to do it, but he knows that he doesn't quite follow modern music. He knows he doesn't quite get it, but yet he extends himself and tries to work with people who do. And the sense that I get is that he sort of just doesn't quite get what everyone's doing. Like, I don't think he really got what Kanye did with All Day, you know. But at the same time, he's smart enough and probably actually humble and magnanimous enough. I think secretly Paul McCartney is probably pretty humble considering how successful he is. He's just able to just sort of say, I'll do something, and whatever these people do, I'm sure it's great. Throughout the entire album, I like it particularly because there's basically two different kinds of remakes here. There's the remake where someone takes almost all of Paul McCartney's original material and takes it out and re-records instruments or re-records vocals. But there's also remixes where they basically just take the song and mix things around and add some things and take some things away, but it's still mostly built on the same structure that Paul McCartney left. And they're both good, and they're both for different reasons. I'm going to be dividing this album into remakes and remixes, but I have news for you. It is wicked subjective. I thought it would be not that hard to determine which was which, but as we'll see, this remix culture, this mashup culture that we're in, it's really hard to start drawing lines places because everything is so fluid. So, you know, the question that I came into is, will this make me enjoy the songwriting of the original more? Will it make me love it more? And I wanted to do that on a song-by-song basis as well. So you see behind me here, my scorecard. You see I have my purple pen, I have my Paul McCartney Lego up there. And I'm going to be determining who wins each song, Paul McCartney or the remixer or the remaker. Who made a better version of Paul McCartney's songs? Why am I doing that? I don't know, it's just kind of fun. So let me start with my favorite song from the album, and it's not even close. Partly because it is the hardest to define whether or not it is a remix or a remake. It is a remix and a remake that definitely makes the song, the original song, way better. It makes me enjoy the original song more, and I love the remix, and that is When Winter Comes, as remixed by Anderson .Paak. Okay? I'll put a link to that up here so you can listen to it. It's so great. I mean, it's basically a remix because he's taking Paul McCartney's original riff and his voice, but then he adds all new instrumentation, a lot of it played by Mac DeMarco, and basically does everything else, and it's redone, and he makes this song, which is a little bit of a goofy song. I mean, all of McCartney III is kind of goofy, because it's kind of like him alone, and you get that sense, but makes it into this beautifully universal song. You know, he takes the drums, and he takes out McCartney's drums and puts in these new drums that sound a lot more like authentically from like 74 or 75, kind of muted, kind of sweet. They get sort of funky in the kind of chorus area, and just the whole song, like even the way that he changes Paul McCartney's vocals, it sounds like Paul McCartney 1974, not Paul McCartney 2021. You know, it's not because of auto-tuner or whatever. It's just this really nicely done remix that just brings both of them totally up. It makes me like Anderson .Paak more. It makes me like the song more. It recontextualizes. It refreshes. It makes When Winter Comes one of my favorite Paul McCartney solo songs. But not Paul McCartney's version. This version. Okay, that's 1 point goes to the visitors. All right, now I'm gonna go over the rest of the album. It was hard to pick one song to play because they're all so different. The first track is Find My Way by Beck. If you know me, you know I have a lot of problems with Beck, I would say. But this is fine. This is a good remix. Hey, I'm doing my video now. Okay, sorry, that was my daughter. She'll make a lot of noise and come downstairs, but now I have to hurry up so I can make her pancakes. So the first track is Find My Way by Beck, and what I like here is that Beck decided to basically do a throwback of his own work. Like, it sounds like Midnight Marauder style, kind of like funk disco, just tons of cowbell, just like a lot of cowbell, and there's a lot of things you can say bad about Beck, but the man knows how to use cowbell. It creates a kind of party vibe on the album, very kind of Marvin Gaye-ish, extends out the jammy nature of the original, and that's the thing with all of the songs from Paul McCartney's last albums. They feel like a person alone in their room, kind of jamming, putting things together. This does that. He adds some vocoder on here, which is nice, some Beck-style guitar lines as well. And what's funny is having this remixed by Beck makes you realize that the original reminds you a little bit of Beck anyways, because there's this kind of like falsetto singing that Paul McCartney does. But I've listened to them back to back, and I have to say, McCartney's going to get this one. This totally made me appreciate the original a lot more, because I listened to them back to back, and I just was really able to hear the great songwriting of Paul McCartney, and especially the way that he's using his falsetto, which he doesn't use all the time, and it's really quite nice. Next track is called The Kiss of Venus by Dominic Feik. I don't know how. If my daughter had come downstairs, she could tell me about Dominic Feik. I think she's a fan. He's like the hottest thing on this album, right? He's not like, you know, an ex-member, you know, a member of Radiohead or a member of Blur, right? Like, he's somebody very, very current, like a young kind of pop star, borderline hyper pop, sort of avant-garde pop singer. And this is just beautiful. This does a lot, like, reminds me of the Anderson .Paak song, just takes this song, The Kiss of Venus, which is extremely catchy, but it's kind of annoying. Maybe I'm just annoyed because I saw him sing it for Jimmy Fallon once, which I don't hate Jimmy Fallon, but I hated watching him interview Paul McCartney. It was one step below the Chris Farley interview. But what's great is that he's re-singing the entire song, right? He's just re-singing it, so this is a real remake, you know? The Find My Way by Beck was just a remix, just taking McCartney's vocals and changing them. Here, Dominic Feik is re-singing. I think he's even adding some lyrics, and he makes the pop of this song pop out, the pop nature, the pop genre. He takes this nice, you know, he takes the bridge and he sings it well, and even at the end, there's sort of like this pitched up hyper pop style with like these cool vocal acrobatics that lead to the outro of the song. So I don't really know Dominic Feik, but Fink? Is there an N in there? I don't know. I don't even know how you spell his name. But this is really nice, and definitely this helped me to forgive the original song for its kind of cheesiness, because when it's redone in a pop context where there's a lot more permission for cheesiness, it ends up being really good. So for this, Dominic, you win another one for The Visitors. Quite a good song. Next track is called Pretty Boys, which is a remix, I don't know. It takes the original vocals, but this band, Kruangbin, is some Texas band that does like this sort of Thailand and influenced funk music. It's great. It's a cool soundtrack. It's a cool spacey bass groove that becomes a kind of disco thing at some point. But this is not good. It's not a good remix, I don't think. I think the original song is fine. I imagine that this band is pretty good. I like what they're playing. But it doesn't work because when Paul McCartney's voice comes in, it sounds like an intrusion. It sounds like, why is there some old dude singing on this song? And it made me, when I re-listened to the original, the simplicity of this kind of weird song, Pretty Boys, and I just liked the kind of guitar-based nature of it. So it looks like we're going to be headed for a tie here with Paul McCartney winning 2. Women and Wives is probably my least favorite song off the original album, so this is a pretty crazy remix because St. Vincent remixes it. St. Vincent's pretty well known, although I've never actually listened to any of their music. I just don't like it enough to review it. I'm not saying it's bad, it just doesn't grab me. But they turn it into a Portishead song to the point where it sounds more like a Portishead cover than it does like a Paul McCartney cover. Just underwater, cool bass and like kind of distorted sounds. I guess she adds some vocal, the lead singer from St. Vincent adds some vocals in there, some nice horn work and even a guitar solo. Unfortunately, I would say neither version is particularly good. I don't think this is a good song. This is the weird sort of Paul McCartney, I'm an old guy, I'm going to preach at you song, but in kind of a weird way. So I don't know. I'll give it to St. Vincent by default, just because I think I'd prefer to listen to this version just because it sounds a little bit like Portishead. But either way, that's a skipper on the album. Deep Down is awesome. That's another great example of why this album is worth listening to, by Blood Orange. You know, Paul McCartney's kind of weird. I mean, he has the reputation as being the normal one, right? As being this sort of bland family person, but he has a real weird streak to him. And Deep Down, I think, is a song where you hear that, and Blood Orange brings that to the fore. Makes the weirdness of the original and makes it more clear. Extends out this crazy high singing. They harmonize with McCartney, and they emphasize the avant-garde nature of Paul McCartney's solo stuff. A cool piano line, even with some loud blaring sounds. And on my last video, it seems like I'm always making fun of McCartney when I'm praising him. I think when someone is that successful, it's good to mock them. But the thing I say to anybody who makes fun of Paul McCartney is, this is the guy who wrote Helter Skelter. And he wrote Helter Skelter to write Helter Skelter. He was like, okay, people are making more aggressive music here. How about I basically invent heavy metal? Don't get mad at me. I know he didn't invent heavy metal. People bought it before. But still, it definitely had a huge influence on a lot of people and pushed popular music, pushed rock music towards heavy metal. We can at least say that about Helter Skelter. And this is the Long and Winding Road guy, the same guy who writes all these syrupy songs about his goddamn dogs all the time, right? And he just wrote Helter Skelter. Like, he just was like, poof, and he made a song that goes against his type, that goes against what he had done before, and shifted culture just by doing it. It's that kind of avant-garde sensibility which John always gets credit for, right? And George gets credit for as well, for that matter, for bringing in Indian music. But I think Paul is probably, maybe not the most avant-garde, but definitely as avant-garde as the rest of the original Beatles. So never underestimate Paul McCartney. I love the way that they move with the drumming here. They add some backwards guitar lines in here. So I have a hard time here. I have a hard time determining who's going to win. I want to give it to Blood Orange, but frankly, I re-listened to the original again, and so many of the things that I thought Blood Orange was doing, because they were the avant-garde group, it was actually Paul McCartney's doing. So we're still going to be tied here. We're going to have Seize the Day, which is a remake. Phoebe Bridgers does the entire song. She sings it. It's basically a straight cover of the original. Unfortunately, I don't know how well this works. I like Phoebe Bridgers. I like her quite a bit. But the original song, I think, having it being sung by someone as smart and relevant and young and thoughtful as Phoebe Bridgers, when the song itself is just kind of a I'm an old man and let's talk about how to live song, it doesn't quite work. At times the production pushes it more into being sort of like a Beatles-esque song as opposed to a cover of Paul McCartney, which is a weird distinction, but one that should be made. But, you know, her voice is beautiful and it's sweet and it's got kind of a nice epic feeling to it. Maybe the mix isn't the best. This is maybe the biggest, like, shame that this didn't work out better. Because I bet if they worked together more, they could do something better than this. It's a virtual tie, but I think if I had to listen to either song, I would give it to Phoebe Bridgers just because her voice is just so nice. It's just so nice hearing her voice on here. Next track is called Slidin', which is definitely a remix. It's by EOB, Ed O'Brien, one of the members of Radiohead. And this is funny, you know, my favorite story about Tom York is that he turned down Paul McCartney. There's a Simpsons episode where Homer really wants the Dallas Cowboys. Like, he wants that as a gift from Hank Scorpio. And at the end of the day, he doesn't get the Dallas Cowboys, he gets the Denver Broncos. And he's just not quite happy. And Marge is like, why aren't you happy? You got a football team. And he's like, it's not the same. Getting Ed O'Brien when you wanted Tom York is the equivalent of getting the Denver Broncos when you wanted the Dallas Cowboys. But I think this is probably better than whatever Tom York would have done, because Tom York would never be comfortable doing something like this, I don't think. It's really it takes the song that itself is already almost a hard rock song, almost a sort of 2000s or 90s alternative rock song, and just turns it that way completely. The thing that's lost is there's an agreeable wooziness to the original song. Sliding through the air, and there's something about the sort of the wall of noise that Ed O'Brien is bringing in here, doubling the voice, speeding everything up a little bit, just kind of robs the original charm of the song. Now that's fine. You could say it robs the charm, or you could say it does something different. It's both there. There's a nice little instrumental bit in here, which is one of my favorite parts on the entire album, so it's not like this is a bad remix or a bad version. But in the end, it made me realize that there was an ineffable quality to the original that I didn't fully recognize. So, McCartney, you're going to get another vote. I think your original is better. Long-Tailed Winter Bird is another one of these remixes that's almost a remake, where Damien Albarn, the guy from Blur, so first Radiohead, now Blur, takes the original and he sort of does a little bit what Anderson .Paak does. Like he breaks everything down and turns it into something almost like a boppy New Jack soul ballad. It's really kind of nice because the original song is like a dirge. I mean, not really a dirge, but it's kind of based on a ditty, like and he takes that and he puts that in the end. He doesn't put that in the front, and he alters the voice with the vocoder, and you know you do get that original riff. But he does one of these things that makes a great remake where my brother Amos is a great artist, and he taught me how to do drawings of things. And I'm not a particularly good artist, but I took his suggestion. And he said, whenever you're painting a portrait, draw the thing that you associate most with your subject last. So, you know, I would draw Chewbacca, right? Because I'm a Chewbacca collector. And he's like, don't draw the strap first. Save that until the end. Because you'll just rely on that, and you'll rely on that little aspect that is the easiest, that's the most recognizable, and you'll go, oh, there it is. So don't draw the glasses first if someone has glasses. Don't draw a famous shirt if they wear a shirt that's famous. Do everything else. This does that, where the thing that defines the original song is this little riff, and they move that around and they take that out and they bring the rest of the song structure to the front. Very good job. Much like Beck, I have an ambiguous relationship with Damon Albarn, but he's going to put the Visitors in the lead. Lavatory Lil is a remake, but it's not good. It's fine. It's good. I don't know. This is by some guy from Queens of the Stone Age. I don't know. Lavatory Lil is not a great track on the original, and he doesn't do anything to change it, really. Basically just redoes it with his voice, which I guess is slightly more rockin' than current Paul McCartney voice, you know? But not much of a song, not much of a remake. But I'll give this to McCartney because, I don't know, at least it's original. Then we have When Winter Comes. There you go. And now, with our tie here, we have one last song, Deep, Deep Feeling, by 3DN RDN, I guess one of the guys from Massive Attack. This is great. I didn't think it was great. This is the one that took me the most time to determine. It's a 9-minute cover of a couple-minute song. Deep, Deep Feeling is one of the highlights of the original album. So initially, I hear it, and it's like this kind of glitchy techno song, like maybe what you would imagine Tom York would have done if you'd worked with him a decade ago. And when the voice comes in, it reminded me of the other time on the album where the voice sounds incongruous, like that song, it was like that Thai funk song, where it's like, no, like you're doing something and then you're shoehorning Paul McCartney in here and it doesn't work. That's how it starts, like the singing about this deep, deep feeling. But then it develops so nicely, where the arpeggiator comes in, the beat picks up a little bit, and all of a sudden you're liking the original vocals in here until this great moment. I really suggest you listen to this, where he starts singing about the ocean of love. I'm so close to a good Paul McCartney impersonation. And he just takes the sound and chops it up and breaks it up, and you just like, he does what you love people to do when they make electronic music, at least what I love, where they'll take a certain phrase and repeat it and then distort it and mess it around until it starts haunting your brain. Ocean of love. And it's playing on, again, the avant-garde, cool nature of the original. And what he's doing, you know, Paul McCartney's voice is a monument, right? It is. It's a monument. Like, you hear his voice, and it is a 30-foot sculpture made out of marble. Right? But with age and with time, the sculpture's a little bit weathered, you know, there's some chips at the bottom of the heel on the left foot, you know. This giant sculpture is a little bit worse for wear. This is like taking that little bit of the heel that was chopped off, you know, that fell off over time, and like encasing it in some kind of synthetic metal sculpture case and putting it in a modern museum. Just a totally new recontextualization, but still based on this thing. And in the end, there's this whole bit where he says, sometimes I wish it would go away, sometimes I wish it would stay. And he takes them and they layers them over the synthesizers, and he makes them a little bit off kilter and off rhythm, so they don't quite go together. And you realize it's such a great original song. It's such a great cover. Neither of them are the same. You can barely tell that they're the same song, but when you listen to it, you realize it's the same soul of the same song, just done two different ways. I'm gonna have to do what my mom used to do every single time we had a game, every time we play against each other. She would end everything in a tie. I'm gonna give it to both of them because this is so good. Which means that here we have the fundamental question. Should this have been made? Yes, this is great. And you should listen to it. Does it make McCartney III better? That is a surprisingly emphatic yes. I love Paul McCartney III. I don't know if I love it. I might love it. Whereas before I thought it was good, it was worth talking about, I'm happy it exists, I'm happy Paul McCartney's still working. Now, rehearing these songs and hearing them messed around with makes me just love it. Like, makes me just like really appreciate it a lot more. I love that these both exist. I think we should have them at the same time. I think we should listen to them. And I think this does something absolutely fascinating, and I'm really happy this is happening. I hope this keeps happening. I hope every artist releases an album and then has a whole bunch of other people revisit it, because it allows you to spend a lot more time in the process of songwriting, in the process of production, and enjoying this art. Yeah. I forgot my Patreon sheet over here, so I'm gonna go get that. But I will say, if I talk about Paul McCartney, I have to always say the most controversial opinion that I hold. Every single song on here is better than Long and Winding Road. Phil Spector version, naked version, live version, don't care. Don't care. Every song that every artist on here has ever written and recorded is better than Long and Winding Road. Okay. These are my Patreons here. I'll put them up there. Why not? My Patreons allow me to buy music. That's why I have Patreons. I don't need the money, like Paul McCartney. Well, I'm not that rich, but yeah, I have a good job and I'm okay. But my Patreons help me to order music online to support artists. Because this channel is about... Yeah, Toby, I'm talking about Patreons. Toby, you want to come here? You want to come here? You want to say hi? I got a picture of you here. Hop up. Hop up. Ah. You know, they helps me to buy new music and to support artists. And like Paul McCartney, that's what I want to do. Toby, you are absolutely crazy. Okay, go. Oh, boy. All right. Well, for Toby and for random patron Andrew Leslie, there's the camera.